My name is Krishan Mehta, and I'm the Vice President of Inclusion and Equity at the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Greater Toronto Chapter. I am also the co-chair of the Diversity to Inclusion series. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here today to the second event in this series, with a special focus on South Asian philanthropy. Before I invite Aditya, the co-chair of this conference, to deliver the keynote address, I would like to provide you with a short background about this initiative. Ontario's urban centres are amongst the world's most diverse places anywhere, especially in North America. 3 million people here consider themselves to be visible minorities, and in recent years we've made some considerable strides in areas such as gender equity, accessibility, and diversity training across many sectors. And as some of you may know, it is expected that by 2017, there will be well over 1 million South Asians living in Toronto. These are and remain important contextual notes and a kind of backdrop for this project. Last year, in partnership with AFP Toronto and Ottawa, we applied for funding through the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration's Partnership Project Office to launch a series that would take a long-term view on inclusion by uncovering stories of giving amongst emerging donor groups, and to carve out a dedicated space for an honest exchange on how to strengthen our work and our relationships with the community. Our project is really a number of organized presentations that bring together, for the first time anywhere in Canada, donors, fundraisers, volunteers, and nonprofit managers to look at what we know, what we don't know about giving within the community, and how we can work together to become a world-class, forward-thinking, and inclusively minded sector. We are very fortunate to have secured the patronage of the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, the Honourable David Onley. His Honour cannot be here with us today, but we'll be sure to provide him with all the details and outcomes of today's proceedings. However, I do want to acknowledge the participation of many of the board members here from both the AFP Toronto chapter and the Ottawa chapter. So if you are here, please rise and we can give you a round of applause. Thank you for joining us here, supporting this initiative. Over the next 3 years, in addition to this conference, the association will be organizing similar gatherings looking at philanthropy within the following communities: the Jewish community, African, Caribbean, Muslim, Hispanic, and Indigenous groups. As some of you know, a couple of weeks ago we held our first conference looking at philanthropy in the Chinese community, and guess what? We had 150 people there, so that's a really great start for us. Today we have 180 people, so we're really excited about how this is growing and spreading like wildfire. While we are cutting across diasporas, cultures, and faiths, we are also going to be focusing on philanthropy in women, LGBT groups, people with disabilities, youth, and Francophone Ontarians. Each of these conferences will be video recorded and archived for future reference on our website, afpinclusivegiving.ca. And the best part is that all of these materials will be available for free, and the conversations will continue online through our discussion boards and social media. We've also begun or started a hashtag here. So if you look on the screens there behind you, you'll see hashtag inclusive giving. So if you are tweeting, please, about this event, please use this and follow along after the proceedings as well. We have articulated 5 learning outcomes for this project. First, we want to develop our intercultural competencies. We also want to rethink and examine the ways in which fundraisers identify, cultivate, solicit, and thank donors. Third, we want to learn about the best ways to promote and engage people on the ground and at leadership levels. We want to gain an appreciation also of the nuances found within each community. This is what I call the diversity within diversity factor. And finally, we want to offer cross-cultural networking opportunities and develop a research initiative that may stem from these events. At the end, We hope to have created a foundation from which new conversations will emerge and more advanced information sharing can take place. This is a first time for our sector in Ontario and in Canada. Some have even noted that this may be the first time in North America that we've approached diversity, inclusion, and giving, the study of those three things, with such rigor and deep coordination. So let's treat this moment, let's treat this conference, the conference from 2 weeks ago and the future conferences, as an opening conversation. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to introduce Aditya in one moment. Thank you. When I first met Aditya about 5 years ago, he was already making some major philanthropic moves in Ontario and back home. Aditya brings to the table a key eye on the tangible outcomes of giving and thinks critically about the relationship between philanthropy and entrepreneurial work. I guess that makes sense, especially given that Aditya is one of the most successful serial entrepreneurs that I know. I'm not going to recount everything that you can read in the bios in front of you there, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. First, what's not listed, or something that you might not know at first glance, is that Aditya holds a very special power, a power that I call infectious philanthropy. He gives as an example to others, and somehow it sticks, it spreads, far and wide. In fact, I would argue that he, along with many of the other speakers today, have propelled South Asian giving forward in Ontario, taking the charitable soul of this community out of the limelight. Secondly, Aditya has some very provocative thoughts about the fundraising professional. He always says, yes, fundraisers need to be well-trained. Go to as many conferences as you'd like. But they also need to be well-tuned. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about that this afternoon. Aditya has received countless accolades for the impact he has made on the South Asian community, the business community, and the philanthropic community at large. Earlier this month, he was named a member of the Order of Canada, and this is certainly a great culmination of all of his efforts. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Aditya to join me on stage.
Thank you very much for this wonderful and not that much accurate praise of mine. And just to copy somebody whom I really admire, and he said, after hearing all these good things, I will have to go to the temple for two reasons. One is that I will have to pray and tell God that, hey, this was not all true. I didn't tell him anything, but he did say it, so I'm sorry. And the second thing is I really liked it. So I'm sorry for that also. So anyway, I will go there. I think one thing is definitely not true, that as he mentioned, he's the most successful entrepreneur. By the way, I don't consider myself even successful, because the way I parse the word successful is the one who is full of success. I don't know anybody who is full of success, because to me, success is an event, it is not a state. So nobody is successful. If there is any word which should be there, it should be failureful, because we have more failures than we have success. So good afternoon, and welcome to you all for coming together to celebrate the spirit of giving and sharing. Our presence here is testimony of our awareness of engaging ourselves for larger social causes. The title of my presentation is a little bit funny, South Asian Philanthropy, Giving, Selling, Training, and Tuning. So that's the title, to understand South Asian philanthropy. These are my reflections from being a South Asian philanthropist, running my own small private foundation, a South Asian community activist, an entrepreneur, having been involved in as an entrepreneur, and having been involved with the major fundraising campaigns for university, and above all, being very passionate about promoting and nurturing the idea that new Canadians have a special obligation to give to the mainstream causes. I'm going to present before you 4 themes that may provoke you to look differently at philanthropy among South Asian and how to approach it. And these themes are South Asian philanthropy and its cultural aspect, giving a charity to self or to others, minority majority Canada, giving to mainstream causes. And the last one is what you heard just now, the training or tuning for fundraising professionals. So these are the 4 themes I will be touching upon. The South Asian subcontinent majorly consists of 5 religious groups: Hindu, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains. Giving to causes beyond your own self is deeply ingrained in the cultural and religious ethos of the South Asian society. This is the month that just celebrated 150 years of great Indian saint and philosopher Swami Vivekananda. I saw a quote from him plastered on the walls of main streets of Mumbai, and that read, "They alone live who live for others." The Puranas, which is the Indian texts, are a genre of important Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, and Sikh religious texts, notably consisting of narratives of the history of the universe from creation to destruction, genealogies of kings, heroes, sages, and demigods, and descriptions of Indian cosmology, philosophy, and geography. And the great sage Vedavyas, who has given important religious texts to India, summarized the gist of all religious texts and said in a Sanskrit sloka, and what he said that in all 18 volumes of Puranas, he wanted to convey just 2 things: to help others under all circumstances is a life without sinning. To hurt others and neglect others' suffering, in fact, is the life of sinning. One of the most important principles of Islam is zakat, that all things belong to God, and that the wealth is therefore held by a human being in trust. The word zakat means both purification and growth. Our possessions are purified by setting aside a proportion of those in need, and like the pruning of plants, this cutting back balances and encourages new growth. These are very powerful cultural and religious aspects of lives of South Asians. Now, in the context of the South Asian giving in Canada, I would like to take you to the first theme of my presentation, and that is philanthropy and its cultural aspect. The Asians in general, and Canadians of South Asian origin in particular, share the following. There are definitively exceptions to what I'm going to describe, but these are my generalized opinions that need to be understood, reflected, and debated in order to gainfully engage South Asians in giving back to the mainstream Canadian social causes in significant way. First, for South Asians, their legacy is their children. And they are accustomed to giving and leaving back all that they earn to their children, which is in contrast to the wealthy in the West, for whom their legacy is in large way is what they leave for the society. Secondly, for new immigrants, there is a hidden fear factor and lag in recognition that it is the high time that they should start giving back. They have this subconscious level fear that something bad may happen in the future, and they have not made enough that they should start giving back now. Thirdly, the South Asian immigrants have come from a social system where all institutions of public purpose has always been fully supported by their governments. And hence generally they think that it is the job of the government to support universities, hospitals, museums, operas, and symphony, etc. They also think that these institutions have very large financial needs, and only government can provide for it, as their own means comparatively are so insignificant. Lastly, when South Asians look at the richness of these public institutions, and we are here, I was just speaking with somebody that can we ever imagine having a library like this in India and having all these facilities? So they see a contrast to the poor state of institutions back in their native country and how far the dollar can go in their native country, then they are motivated to give back for the causes in their native country. It is with this background and further reflections and discussions, the community leaders and fundraising professionals need to approach this highly potent group of South Asians that is the largest growing population segment in Canada and is relatively highly resourceful. I would like to take you to the next theme of my presentation, and that is giving charity to self or others. I have an unconventional definition for philanthropy, and I would like to separate it from the definition of charity. It needs to be further elaborated and refined and contextualized. Here is the rough and quick version. Philanthropy, I was looking at the dictionary definition, and I found some of these things. The major religions of the world are based on the ideals of love of humankind, the actual meaning of the word philanthropy. Because of its universality, the concept of caring for one another can be taught in its cross-cultural perspective without bias towards one religious belief or another. Philanthropy is the desire to promote the welfare of others, expressed especially by the generous donation of money to good causes. On the other hand, charity is also similar, generosity and helpfulness, especially towards the needy or suffering, which is also about aid given to those in need. The term philanthropy and charity are used interchangeably. However, I would like to submit that we need to see giving beyond the paternalistic attitude, that I am more able and you are needy, and hence being a good human being, I'm helping you. I wish to coin a new definition of philanthropy, that is giving to your expanded self and giving to your passion. It is not primarily about helping others. Rather, it is about giving your resources to what you are passionate about. As a result of giving to your expanded self, what is happening is others are directly and indirectly benefiting. For example, you believe in a society where there should be equal opportunity for all, and you understand that would only happen if you support those who are less fortunate. You are doing this because of a belief, and not because you want to help that poor person. If you believe in and enjoy art and cultural performances and would like to support those institutions and individuals where you would find your passion served well, it is about giving to your expanded self and passion, but major beneficiary of that is the society and larger community. For lack of a better term, I would call this enlightened giving as philanthropy. I wish to share my own personal example, and sometimes it does give me a guilt feeling about I am going to share with you. I have found that one's philanthropic deeds and giving, if it is organized and impactful and sustainable, then one is not only serving her passion and expanded self, but you also materially benefit in a significant way. I won't be standing in front of you having this opportunity to chair this conference and giving this keynote speech, but for my philanthropic work and philanthropic persona. I would not have even been considered by the Ryerson University for the honorary doctorate, but for the work I have done for the Aboriginal community and my partnership with Ryerson University for the Aboriginal project. I have no doubt that my receiving Order of Canada is aggregated outcome of all the work I have done with the universities, the Canadian Aboriginal community, my leadership role with the community organizations, and my philanthropy giving to several mainstream causes. It has allowed me to interact with the who is who of the Canadian political and corporate world. It has opened doors for me, which otherwise would not have happened, and that's why I said that sometimes I have the guilt feeling. My question to all of you is philanthropy not about giving to your expanded self and even to your material self? Helping others is a byproduct, and your expanded self touches beyond the physical boundaries of your family and your vested interests. While I have just scratched surface through mostly in a focused way through my own private charitable foundation at the universities and other institutions and within my own circle of influence, I must admit that I have found the journey of graduation from charity to philanthropy happening over years. It doesn't happen just like that. And it has been the most rewarding thing in my own life. Now I have made it a personal passion to aggregate my philanthropic efforts working with the highly successful members of the South Asian diaspora in Canada so that they give significantly to public causes. It is with this quest that I'm here today in front of you, and I would implore that the fundraising professional community in Canada needs to think differently in order to engage the South Asian groups. That takes me to the third theme of my presentation, minority-majority Canada, giving to mainstream causes. Our Canada is inching towards a country where the minorities together will form the majority of Canada. Canada is aging, and the new Canadian group is relatively younger. The pace of wealth creation in the South Asian group is happening in a significant way. You don't find the likes of rich Peter Monk and other people among South Asians, but the number of multi-millionaires is significant. Are the fundraising professionals readying themselves to tap into the giving of this significant group and the demographic dividend that can come from the emergence of this group? There is this general notion among the South Asian that my time to give is not there yet. It all depends on how we think about giving. We never have spare money to give, but I have no doubt in my mind that we can always spare to give. There is an obligation for the rich to give and think about what social causes they can cultivate to be passionate about. And the word is to cultivate to be passionate about. All of us here could earn large wealth only because we live under fortunate social circumstances. Let's not fool ourselves by giving all credit to our success to our talent, as we don't create those favorable social circumstances by ourselves. Imagine for a moment that if we were left in Peru or Liberia or Ethiopia, then how much of our talent could have produced for us in those nations? Or if we were born into a poor African family, how much of talent we would have developed if we were part of those circumstances? And geographies. Nobel laureate Herbert Simon estimated that the social capital is responsible for at least 90% of what people earn in wealthy societies. At least 90%, in the wealthy societies. I'm trying to make a case here that all of us have an obligation to give and pay back to that social capital. And all of us can spare to give and give to the mainstream causes as we created our wealth in this country. We need to give to the social capital, as that alone has allowed us to succeed. Now I'd like to bring your attention to the last theme of my presentation, training or tuning of fundraising professionals. While the significant wealth creation in Canada is happening in the South Asian groups and amongst the new Canadians, the extent and the pace of giving back for the social causes of Canada by them have been very slow. In my humble opinion, the fundraising professionals, while being so professionally trained in their trade, have not fully understood the psyche of the South Asian groups and the opportunity that it presents. They have also not fully understood the demographic shift of Canada, aging Canada, and Canada slowly turning into majority-minority Canada. There is a demographic dividend to be reaped, but that will happen only with new realization of the realities of today's economy, as well as what will tickle this new group of potential donors pink. In my considered opinion, it is a journey, and also more importantly, tuning of the fundraising professionals, as well as of the creating motivational environment for the South Asian groups to give to the mainstream causes. And I'm not getting into the details what I think could be those motivational environment. For us to reap the demographic dividend, it requires radical transformation in approach and thinking of fundraising professionals beyond the existing well-tested technical parameters of public fundraising. Fundraising professionals need to find motivational approaches to draw South Asians. Fundraising professionals should not have too much faith and be rigid with the technical parameters of fundraising that has worked in past and worked with the mainstream community. And I had one frustrating example, and I'm not going to mention, that we wanted a South Asian to give for a center to be named, and I knew that he will give slowly, so let's start with 1 million, but they were, to name a center, but they were so rigid, it has to be 10 million. I even challenged the vice president. I said, can you name me one person in whole of Canada for that specific purpose who you can motivate to give $10 million? He couldn't say that, but he wouldn't take the money. I said, you got to draw them in. So what is the first dose of that opium that the South Asian need to taste so that they want to come back and want more of that to give significantly to public causes? It is not about having a separate committee of South Asians or give prominent role for a South Asian. Rather, how would the mainstream of fundraising professionals tune to the South Asian giving, or for that matter to the new Canadians? As our societies are becoming more prosperous and more democratic, the instruments of wealth creation are no longer aggregated in the hands of governments. When people at the lowest strata of the different geographies are exposed to what is available there in the world to enjoy, all are aspiring to be able to use the common infrastructure, and all wants a chance to have it. Governments cannot provide those infrastructure and conditions alone. There is a greater need to public-private partnership to address this massive social need and social giving. There is a viability gap that needs to be addressed and provided for in a collective way. I am a great admirer of private giving, and especially the great support it has provided in creating world-class infrastructure in the Western world and the massive support to life-threatening causes around the world. One of the most notable things that private giving is that it is not beholden to lobbying or political considerations of public giving or major wastages caused by large-scale bureaucratic, not-for-profit, charitable organizations. Private philanthropists are free to venture where the governments and politicians are feared to tread. However, you may be shocked to know that the wealthiest individuals of the world give only 9% to charitable causes, and at the same time, 2% for their pets. And rest go to their kids. The legendary Warren Buffett says he believes in giving his children enough so they feel they could do anything, but not so much that they could do nothing or need to motivated to do nothing. Let us pause over this statement that I said just now, how we of South Asian origin think about our accumulated wealth. How do the trained but not tuned fundraising professionals of Canada think about this and approach the aspect of demographic dividend? I must admit that I have been active in the world of sharing my fortunate circumstances only for the last 10 years and have picked up some experience that I would like to share with you. First, be active with the cause that you give to. Where you are actively involved with your money, time, and talent to a cause that you are passionate about, there will be multifold impact than the paternalistic mode of giving where you just cut a check. Your presence and involvement allows stringent control, oversight, and the cause benefits immensely from your insight that you have accumulated by virtue of being so successful. I'm using the word again. Philanthropy of affluence has given rise to new business, that is business of philanthropy, which in many cases leads to wastage akin to running large bureaucratic type of organizations. In the long run, harms the cause of philanthropy. Large number of third world philanthropic delivery, and even in Canada, is disgusting and wasteful. In the developed world, there is this mentality amongst the people involved in fundraising and project execution that for doing something good, you need abundance of resources. People who give majorly are very frugal in their own life, and therefore they accumulate wealth. But it is amazing that their own generous giving resulting of frugal accumulation is managed sometimes with affluent wastage. Hence my strong suggestion that be active with your giving and choose projects that you are passionate about, your entrepreneurial presence will do much good than what your money alone will do. Before I became active with giving, I looked at giving as charity to others. Now I see giving a charity to myself. You're giving to your expanded self, your passion, your talent to make change, and to your obligation to pay back to the favorite social circumstances so that those circumstances are sustainable for yourself, your kids, and for all that you care about. Last but not least, I'd like to make a case that we should support mainstream Canadian philanthropic projects in major way, and international projects as well as projects in South Asia with a lesser portion of our total giving. Most of the successful South Asian professionals and entrepreneurs here have done relatively better than those who have been in Canada for generations. We have become successful by delivering mainstream services to the mainstream people. Then why should our giving be mainly to ethnic causes? There could be the logic that Canada is a rich country, but let's look at the plight of the unfortunates in Canada and the need of philanthropic dollars to support our universities, hospitals, opera, museum, environmental causes, etc. And let me end my thoughts again by repeating what Swami Vivekananda said: they alone live who live for others. Finally, very special thanks to Krishan Mehta for his leadership in making this event happen and bringing such a wonderful team together. Please give him and his team a big round of applause. Thank you.
It's not me. I did nothing. This is actually the work of a tremendous committee. Afshan, Arti, Archana, Ashutosh. Could you please stand and take some kudos from this crowd? This is the organizing committee along with Aditya, our chair. Aditya, thank you very much for those very provocative words. And on behalf of AFP, we'd like to thank you by making a donation to a charity of your choice. There are many choices I know you have to make. This is for you. Thank you again. I'd now like to call upon Archana Sridhar, who's Assistant Provost at the University of Toronto and co-founder of the South Asian Philanthropy Project, an amazing blog that tracks South Asian giving across the world, to start our panel discussion with our philanthropists. Archana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Archana, and I want to welcome all of you again today and thank the AFP and Krishan and all of the organizers. It's really, really wonderful to be here. Before I bring up our illustrious panel, I just wanted to acknowledge again, as everyone said, that this is truly a landmark event. We've been waiting for years to have exactly this kind of conversation about bringing South Asian leaders, philanthropists, nonprofit managers, and people from outside the community here together to talk about these themes. So I know so many of us are excited that this is finally here. So I'll invite our panelists to come up. I think we're going to have some microphones for them to pass back and forth. And while they're coming up, I'll just say that we're going to explore some themes. And in our format, I will ask some questions, and we'll have 20 minutes at the end. But it'll be very important for everyone who wants to ask questions to come to the two microphones here. So want to answer. I'd love it if we stayed as informal, conversational as possible. You can speak with each other if you have anything you'd like to say by way of follow-up. And maybe around 3 minutes apiece to answer our questions, and we'll see how much time we have to get through. But before we begin any questions, I'd like to just introduce our panelists. You have the program, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'm joined by Dr. Terry Papneja. Terry is president of Aim for Seva, a nonprofit organization focused on children's education in India. He also has a successful dentistry practice in Brampton and has raised more than $3 million over the past few years for projects in India. Neena Kanwar is here. She is president and CEO of KMH Cardiology and Diagnostic Centers. She serves on the boards of St. Michael's Hospital and the Sherborne Healthcare Corporation, and she's won numerous awards for her civic leadership and entrepreneurship success. And of course, Aditya, our notable keynote speaker. Many of the questions are going to follow directly on things that he said in his remarks, so I'm excited about that as well. So, yes, thank you. So question number one that I wanted to start with is, what are some of your own main motivations for charitable giving? What are your own priorities for philanthropy? And looking over your bios, I see different priorities here in Canada and abroad, so I was hoping that you might speak a bit to that. And please feel free to include examples from your own experience. So Terry, if you'd like to begin.
I guess, like Aditya alluded, we do take everything, whatever the resources we generate from the surrounding, from the society. Society has an inbuilt social capital, like Aditya is saying. That's where that becomes the reason you're able to accumulate so much wealth. And a lot of philosophical article you read as well as you experience that when you help others, when you give, that's the time you feel a greater satisfaction in living. Rabindranath Tagore also, one of the quotation is very famous, that you are born to live for others. And in process you will be helped by others as well. And if you can do best of your ability, there's nothing more satisfying to that. I personally got involved, like I was born and raised in India. I did dentistry there in India and then came back here. So I always used to think like the Indian taxpayer paid for my education and I owe the debt to the society. So I wanted to give it back in some form or the others. And education was always close to my heart. That empowers. It's not when you educate a child, you are educating and empowering them as well as the future generation of a child. So I became a part of an organization called Aim for Seva, where we make hostels for poor children. These poor children come from the remote areas of India where there are no roads, no school. So we bring them to these hostels in a bigger town, and then we provide them everything, and they go to the regular government-run schools, and they are educated. And we take them to the finish line. Idea is that anybody wants to go to the college, university, or want to acquire some skill set, we will provide that. So from Toronto, the idea I floated, part of the committee members, as well as other community leaders, we have been able to construct so far 20 hostels in India from Toronto in 10 years. And we support 600 children every year for their education and food, all their needs. So this is what we have sort of been doing it. My experience is if you are transparent, you give the accountability where the fund is going, people do come back. Next year they want to donate. I have seen people, even working $10, $15 an hour, and they will be happy to save $500 to support one child. And they have so much joy in doing it. And they have so much trust in giving us the money simply because we are able to show them how the funds are spent, what is the accounts, everything. And they see value in it, that how the money is helping, educating some child. So our experience is good in the sense that people keep donating us year after year after year. And gradually as it expands, the name spreads. I would say about good $40,000, $50,000 every year we get from the donors whom we have not approached. They come on their own and donate. So overall, it lies in when you're doing any charity work, how you can project the accountability and transparency, and you can show the value to the donor, you will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I guess I'm a little bit different. Maybe I wanted to become a doctor since I was 5 years old, so it's because I wanted to look after sick people, so healthcare was my main priority. But I didn't get into medicine. I suppose I was too charitable. But you know, following with that about wanting to take care of people and wanting to take care of sick people, I didn't give up that idea. So today I'm in healthcare. I'm providing a valuable service. It's a job that I love doing. So that's, you know, it's my passion. When the donation for Credit Valley came up, I saw the opportunity to actually help more people than I could have if I had become a doctor. So I think, you know, those are kind of the things that motivate me in terms of, and you know, I remember as a child watching the channel that I forget what the channels are, but you know, they're showing the people in Africa and how they're starving, and I'm sitting there crying my eyes out. I'm preparing. I learned how to knit or tat or something, and I'm making those things and I'm selling them and I'm sending money over there. My father could never understand what was wrong with me, but I think I just, you know, I like helping people. I sympathize with people who, I appreciate that I have a good life, and I feel for the people who don't, and if I can make a difference in their lives and make their lives better, then that gives me satisfaction.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
For me, the motivation is how passionate I am with the cause, and that's very important. And also how well I can connect with the person who has approached me, because that's very, very important. It's just I am a name in the list, and then they just call me. So I would be normally a tough person to get money from, but if I'm connected, then it's different. It's very important for me. When I started, this has been a gradual process and learning and growing. But when I started and I was reflecting when I sold my first software company, and I came to the conclusion that I would like to support education. Even in education, I'm not a big believer in buildings and all that. Centers named was bursaries for the student. Next phase would be encouraging teachers to teach well. So to me, it's very important. I love one thing about Canada is the universal health care. And I would wish if there was something universal education. Anybody and everybody had all the means to study what they could. And that would not happen through the government funds, so the private giving has to play a role. And the second one, which just through evolution I picked up, was the Aboriginal community. And my focus is, and Ashutosh here, he helps me a lot, is to nurture entrepreneurship. How can we bring the focus of wealth creation amongst the First Nation? Because we have a third world and first world Canada. And it's a big topic. It's a big problem for Canada. Serious problem for Canada. So that's another one, that how instead of them being economically dependent, they start contributing economically, be well-off like any one of us.
I love hearing the themes about entrepreneurship and bringing those skills that you all have. You know, even when you were a child, Neena, I love that story, and talking about your background and also transparency and accountability. That's a huge theme that I hear from you all and from the community, South Asian community in general when it comes to this. Just taking what you said, Aditya, and moving forward on that, we'll skip to sort of the question that I told you would come a little later, but it sounds like with our mixed audience of fundraisers and donors and nonprofit folks, I wanted to ask your candid thoughts, if you could speak a little more, and then both of you as well, about how you like to be asked to give. It sounds like you really do value making a connection with the person who asks or the fundraiser. I know that's probably the case with a lot of folks, but maybe a little bit more about that. how you like to be asked, and if there are any personal experiences you can share about that. That would be great, I think, for
I can share a negative personal experience, but
well,
the positive...
Either way.
But the positive is that I have done serious selling job at Bell Canada in my own company. And what I have learned over the period is selling is not sell something. If you're a successful salesperson, which we all are, is how well you motivate me in wanting to have something what you have to offer. And so the way to approach is that motivational, how do I motivate this person? Not try to sell, oh, I have the best pen, or I have the best microphone, and buy it. Rather, motivate me. So that's the one. And giving, there is something noble about giving and for the philanthropy causes. I would like that you see that sense of nobility when you meet a fundraising professional. It should not come as a cold cut approach. Like one place I set up endowment to, I don't want to give exact detail, but I endowed for First Nation people to see something which otherwise they don't. And initially the person who approached me accepted it, but I think whenever she sees me, she tries to avoid me, because I would ask, did you call these First Nation people? Did they use that fund? Because I don't think she wants to even approach me, because it's a lot of work, because I have made her life a little difficult. Because and same way, there was a huge event I did to promote something Canadian in Nepal. And the person, I said, hey, don't spend money because you can waste too much of money. And it's a long story, but I tried my best to cut his expenses. I had nice bottles of wine. I had him stay at the executive floor so that the drink is free, but he must go to the bar. He must go to the bar because he wanted the ambience. But that really, for people like me, it's total turn off. So I would just say that these are important things.
Neena, I don't know if you have anything about how you like to be asked to give, or if you're working with fundraisers.
Well, no, I don't really. I think for me, it's more about I want to make sure that majority of the funds are going to be used for the purpose that they're donated for. So I'm not interested in having the funds used for salaries for the CEOs and the executives and all of that kind of stuff. So in giving to an organization, that would be what I would be looking for. I don't really have a lot of time to sort of, how should I say, find out what's happening to my donation investment, so to speak. Once in a while, fine, I'll want to know that what's being done, but just at the outset, I want to know what the funds are being used for, and I guarantee that they're going to be used for that purpose only.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
I guess it depends on the cause also. If you're passionate about the cause where the money is being asked, that, and as well as how much impact you're going to create out of it. Those are the few considerations your mind is always evaluating. Many times, a lot of people come and they approach us. I'm a dentist, so a lot of patients' base is there. They are involved in charity work, and a lot of children have a school team, so they raise funds for it. So there are many projects they come along. So I guess that all depends on what you're passionate about and how the money is being spent as well.
Yeah, thank you. For our next question, I wanted to ask about what kind of shared values or shared vision do you think that we have as a community, as the South Asian community, when it comes to philanthropic impact, or do we have shared values or vision? And can South Asians do more in this space, and if so, how? So more about us as a community of givers or a community of philanthropists.
I guess like Aditya alluded also, that in our cultural bias, there's a lot of emphasis on giving. But at the same time also we have to recognize South Asian community, most of them are immigrants. Majority of them are the first generation. first generation is still busy overcoming the fear of insecurity. They are not feeling secure in the new environment till the time they have established themselves. They have paid off all their debts, they have a house, or they feel comfortable. And then they start to give. But luckily I see now the second generation who has grown up here, and they have the value of giving from early on. They're starting to work, but they are at the same time they are giving, they are donating. They do not have those sort of fears and the insecurities of it. Of course, South Asians who have done very well, even the first generations, they are giving very, very generously, and we are very proud of them. But overall, I see that there is a lot of giving by the South Asians, people who have done well. But at the same time, I see more is yet to come. The second generation is taking on and moving, joining in the cause.
I think our community is generally a giving community. It's, as long as you have enough to take care of your family, then the community likes to give. And I agree with you about the younger generation. I think they grew up in a different environment, and they have a different set of values. They want to go, for example, to Africa or to India. There's groups that teach English and participate in those kinds of activities and stuff. So I think the younger generations probably, I agree with you, does more than perhaps the older generation.
I think while we have the shining examples like Neena, who have given multi-million-dollar to Credit Valley, and Ajmeras to Museum, and Vasu Chanchalani, and many of them, I don't think we have that kind of shared vision that to give. If we are shared, then we are more into the temples and mosques and religious and community organizations. And it's not because that we are not giving type, but I don't think it is, we think every day, wake up and say, okay, I want to be on the fundraising committee of this university and that university. We don't do that. And I would say that that's why I'm so encouraged that AFP has put up this whole event, that what you need to be, that you need to catalyze it. And because of all the things which I also mentioned. So I don't see we are as a group, as a community, very much geared towards giving to the mainstream things.
I actually agree with you about the temples and the mosques having a lot of funds, and I guess it's been one of my, call it frustrations, because I feel that those funds that are raised at the temples and the mosques could actually be used to serve the community to the people that are less fortunate. And it doesn't get done.
Anything to add, Terry?
Well, I guess all it is, the first generation donates in a smaller portion, a smaller amount. And obviously, the temples and the mosques are the first place of worship. Churches have monthly fees. All the congregation members pays every month X number of dollars to be a member. In temple, mosque is voluntary, and I think they pay less than what the fees the church, people who pay in the churches. So it is not a very large amount, the amount wise, but overall I think the second generation is going to carry the torch well, and we will have the good shining example like donation done by Neena, as well as others, the big amounts to the hospitals, and that basically other will follow.
Yeah, please. I was hoping with this question to start a little bit of a conversation.
Yeah, we don't want to get into a religious debate, but for example, you go to the Gurdwara and then everybody talks about Seva and the langar and everything. I was like, okay, fine, but there's people like me that are going over there to eat langar. Like, do I need to be fed? No, I can pay for my own food. I am not criticizing the Gurdwara or the Sikh temples, but I'm just saying that we need to look beyond it. When we talk about Seva, we need to look for people who actually need that Seva. So that's sort of my controversial opinion.
We like to hear controversial opinions.
I think we should not wait for the second generation to look after giving, because the money has been made. And I've seen personally, if you work with a plan with some of my colleagues, I started with them giving $25,000 because I used to chair UNICEF Canada's one campaign, and now slowly the same person has graduated to multi-million-dollar giving. And it's hard for them, but once they get the taste, and there are certain things which I think it will take a lot of time, and that's why I mentioned about motivational environment. What tickles them pink? And that's not the normal thing. I did some work with the McMaster, and I worked almost against my friend with the fundraising professional at McMaster. I said, do this, do that. Even little things like there were people waiting in the parking lot to have the car parked, and that was noticed. Even little things like that. So there are many things which one understands the cultural nuances and just push them out the gate of giving. And it will be, this generation will give, because they know that they have been very fortunate, they have made significant money.
That was I was going to do one more, but we can turn it over. I think we have, that's fine. So if you want to come to the microphone, we can just go right into Q&A, and maybe I can fit in my question later. If you stand up there, there's two. There's one on the other side, so you can line up or you can come up, and please go ahead.
My question is for you. I agree that the second generation is more aware, they're more financially stable. But what about the causes back home, the problems back home? Like, they were not born and raised there. They didn't see all those people living below the poverty line. So do they have that pain, and do they feel that passion for those causes?
I'm just going to repeat really quick because I don't think the microphone's working. We want to make sure it's recorded. So the question is about giving back to the home countries and really understanding what is going on there when the next generation comes up.
Yeah, I'm a bit biased, and I won't worry about second generation worrying about the home country. I think Canada has its own bit of problems, and especially when I look at the Aboriginals. You have almost 1 million people, and they have the highest suicide rate, the highest drunkenness problem, the most dropout rates from high school, the kids becoming mother at 15, 17. I think if we can just focus on this country alone, and if they are giving, if we give in nature, that is sufficient. So, because India can look after, and other countries can look after their problems.
Neena, do you have any thoughts? I like how we're getting the debate going.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I have faith in the Indian parent. First of all, the emphasis is on education, and second of all, the emphasis is on appreciating what you have. And thirdly, the appreciation is on knowing that there's people out there who don't have what you have. If I didn't finish my dinner, my mom would be pointing out regularly there's children starving in India that don't have this food. And I would be like, well, how's my eating it going to help them? But, it's just, like, I think the Indian parents do a good job in instilling that there are people that are less fortunate than you out there, and the second generation is going to find them.
Terry, do you want to add anything about AIM for Seva? Do you all have sort of young people involved, and maybe that might help towards the question as well?
In AIM for Seva, young people involvement is still less than what we like to be. We are still exploring that possibilities, how we can do. I've been to a couple of times to universities also to talking to student unions. Like this year in Mississauga campus, we did the fundraising event for the Aim for Seva through student union also. I think that would be a good starting place. If more, my focus was most to make them aware about Aim for Seva, and that was a good response. It was not important how much funds we have raised. More important was that they know what the Aim for Seva is, what it does. They have created social media sites also. So that was one of the way. But otherwise, it is a challenging part unless they are already started to work. And through, I guess, word of mouth and joining some associations, through there, it helps to encourage.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question.
Sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My question is perhaps a little educational based. How do you start educating and changing the frame of minds of community members who have come from different parts of the world when it comes to giving locally? There's a large proportion of immigrants who come with the mindset, this is Canada, it's free healthcare. So why do I need to give locally to a healthcare initiative when the government is quote unquote supposed to support me? And instead they start, I am very patriotic myself, but those individuals would start sending bundles of money back home and supporting initiatives over there and not looking at the number of shelters where domestic abuse, violenced women are living, whether pregnant or with young children, or the number of seniors who are going unfed because there is no place to feed them. So how do we start, and who has that responsibility to change the mind shift of the community that, yes, the country where we've all immigrated is a social country and it supports people, but that does not mean that we also start supporting locally whilst we continue to support back home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this becomes the job of a group like this, the fundraising professionals, to go and softly educate this group. So, and also the community leaders, that they have to say that, hey, we are holding prominent positions, we have benefited immensely from this system, so we have to give here. So, but this is a dialogue, it's a process, it will take time, but we must work on this in a very organized way. It's not about finding a South Asian person at CNIB or some place and say, okay, you go and look after the South Asians. I think this will only happen when the mainstream fundraising professionals are able to acclimatize themselves the cultural nuances of giving within these new Canadian groups.
And I think perhaps the approach to the community from the fundraisers has to be a little bit different, right? It's not just a matter of, well, here's the hospital, here's what we're going to do, or here's the shelter, here's what we're going to do. It's like, yes, the government is going to pay for it, but the government only has so much money. And so unless you want, 80% of your taxes, 80% of your income going to the government, there has to be money that's coming from other sources, and those other sources are donations. So it is an education process, and it is a slow process, but I think as fundraisers, that's a role that, fundraisers can play, is the education piece.
Anything, Terry, you'd like to add?
I guess whenever the need is understood, people will do something about it. Living in Canada, it's a First Nation country where everything is being, done well. Even like today's conference, we are sitting in such a beautiful setup, and we had a nice lunch as well. Thank you for organizers for providing that. Now, so we are not aware of it, the needs of the societies. And like Aditya said, is the fundraisers people have, job cut out to, if you educate population to what is needed, then the people will respond to it. Like I was talking to Robin, Sick Children Hospital, they raise $100 million a year because they are able to project the need of the Sick Children Hospital. And the same way other causes, that's what basically need to be done, and that's people will respond to it. We are a very generous society here.
Before we move to the next question, we'll go to the other mic for the next question. I just realized that we need to just define one major term is Seva that we've all been talking about. So maybe, Terry, if you just want to give everyone a quick definition. I know we've been throwing out some words and not everyone will have the definitions. Krishan reminded me that's an important one.
Seva is a Sanskrit word, Hindi word, meaning is service. It says, like in Sanskrit, it means service without expectation of any return. You basically just want to do the service. That's the meaning of Seva. Aim for Seva is an all India movement for Seva. Our idea is more and more people all across India will join the cause and it will grow. So far total we have made 100 hostels in last 10 years where we collect donation from all over the world as well as from India. So the whole organization is growing and people are joining, and that's what it is.
Thank you. We'll move to the other mic for the next question.
This woman was first, however, so...
Oh, okay.
If I might. Oh, okay, thank you. The word frugality, or the topic of frugality was brought up earlier. And along that line, I wish you would share your opinion on foundations whose sole mandate is to support a charity, and the trend right now to rolling those foundations into the main charity. If you have an opinion on that, I'd like to hear that, please.
Can you repeat the last part?
Can you repeat the last part?
Yes, there's a trend right now for charities that also have a foundation partner. The foundation's mandate is typically to serve the charity, and there's a trend right now for a lot of those foundations to be collapsed into the main charity, because in some views, what's really happening is there's 2 audits, there's 2 boards, there's 2 perspectives to manage, and it can be a bit of a duplication. So I'm wondering if you have an opinion on that. As a philanthropist, would you be more inclined to give to the foundation, or would you be more inclined to give directly to the charity?
Personally, I would like to give it to the charity, and than putting one more layer. And I haven't always seen the benefit of amalgamating everything, and then because that also can become a very heavy organization. So I would personally prefer to give it to the.
I have an answer to your first point about having said that you haven't heard about South Asians in the United Way. Well, for that matter, probably you are from Toronto, right?
Mississauga.
Mississauga, because United Way of Peel region is the only United Way in the whole of North America that has begun with the diverse councils. And we've been there for about a year now, and we are working hard to spread our word. And this is probably one of the means why I'm spreading my word of South Asian Council. So I found that a nice excuse to do that. So now you know there is a South Asian Advisory Council at United Way of Peel region, and it's going to reach you now.
Neena, do you have any thoughts to add, any tips, or no, not really? Okay.
We're going to come to Neena as well very soon.
And any other thoughts? Then
the second question I had was in the personal capacity as a new immigrant. I'm still a new immigrant, not even finished my 1,075 days here in Canada. And I have a slight, a very respectfully disagree with you people when you say that the first generation doesn't give and the second generation. They may be, yes, giving, the second generation may be giving traditionally as a charity, but as a first generation, I'll tell you my story. I came in here 3 years ago with $87,000 in my hand. For 2 years, I stayed without a job. It's just 1 year that I'm employed part-time with United Way. The $87,000 that I spent here in Canadian community, which I did not earn a single penny here, is the kind of contribution that I've made here. So please, I think it would be a little belittling to say that the first generation doesn't give. And I'm only 87,000. I've heard of people given $500,000, 200,000, 300,000 brought in from outside. So that should be taken into consideration as well.
Thank you. Let's go to the other microphone for the next question.
So I had a question for you. As a second-generation Canadian, I grew up listening and watching our community in our temples and mosques where individual members would give $20, $50 and support an entire organization. So I know there's been discussion where we've said that the charitable giving often focuses in on temples or, community institutions. I was curious to know if you had seen any examples of charities that were outreaching to these cultural associations or temples or mosques and getting the temples or mosques on board with their charities and working with them. If you can cite any examples you've seen, and if you haven't, where do you see that opportunity and how could it be developed?
I'm talking about second generation. What I'm actually talking about, the older generation versus the younger generation. I think that there is a difference. It's not so much first generation versus second generation. It's the older generation versus younger generation. I'm talking about, my children, maybe myself, but my children's age, which is 26 and 23. I think there's a mentality difference. Sorry, I don't have an answer.
I guess when we talk about first generation giving, not giving that much, it's just the percentage of people not giving. Obviously, there will be good 20 to 40% are very generous. They are able to separate themselves from the money and they donate. They don't have insecurities. But that ratio will increase. That's what we are focusing on. We are not talking in absolute terms. Yeah, go ahead.
We have time we'll just take the two people who are still waiting. So why don't we just make it really brief, the questions and the answers, so we can do the two questions that are left, because we are already behind time. But then I encourage you to come up. We can talk as we move to the breakout sessions.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vijaya Chikraman, and I'm with the Alliance for South Asian AIDS Prevention, a small nonprofit in Toronto. Thank you all for your time and for sharing your experiences with us. I have a question around one of our major challenges when we try and fundraise is getting people on board with a topic that's very stigmatized in our community. So topics of sexual health and sexuality are not one that a lot of people are, ready and willing to publicly donate to. So what are some, maybe strategies or recommendations that the panel might be able to share about how we can overcome that, or how we can walk this sort of balance of, creating non-stigmatizing environments, and also how to approach people in a way that doesn't make them uncomfortable, and get them on board and motivate them for something that we think can be a very passionate cause.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I can answer your specific question, but to me, the very moving. I saw a documentary on television, and it was about women that have been forced into prostitution, that have AIDS. These were respectable married women and stuff like that. To me, that documentary was very educational and very moving, because most people, when they think of AIDS, they have this, like you said, the negative impression of it. But I think that we need to start educating people on that just because somebody has AIDS doesn't mean that they did something wrong. That it's a disease that's out there and that is spreading, and it could be, what people classify as perfectly respectable people who can contract the disease and through no fault of their own. So I think there's quite a few documentaries that I've seen. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but I watch that educational channel a lot, and I find it, I find that it's very eye-opening if we can do more of that kind of educational stuff. And it was specifically actually about India and the women in India and how they're being treated, because I believe there's a shortage of women in India according to that documentary. So
I had chaired UNICEF Canada's AIDS campaign, and the children were impacted. And as a fundraising person, when you approach people, I don't think this topic of that it is stigmatized and that's why people will not contribute. I didn't find that thing. I can agree that the attitude of many of the cultural groups towards a person who would have contracted it may be a little bit not as much as we would desire. But I don't think you should find barriers in accepting as a fundraising professional. You are basically facing the problem which any fundraising professional will face. It's not because you are raising funds for the AIDS.
Let's take our last question.
Hi, I'm with the South Asian Visual Arts Center, and a lot of the fundraising that you've been talking about, or giving that you've been talking about, has been towards health and education kind of sectors, whereas I think the art sector, at least within the South Asian community, it's a harder sector to break into in terms of getting money, which is what an organization like mine has to do. So I would like to hear what your thoughts on how arts organizations, big or small, can what they should be doing to approach South Asian groups or within that demographic, because I think for us, our center serves the South Asian population, but we have a very distant relationship with a mainstream South Asian society.
I agree with you that the art organization would have difficulty, but I have done an endowment with Roy Thompson Hall, MSc Hall, and I had more problem with what I wanted to be done, because these are the organizations. I find art organizations a bit elitist in nature, and they just want you to give the money. There's Toronto Symphony, I'm just using the name, it's a great organization, and they wanted funds, and I said, I don't understand it. You have to understand the majority of South Asians do not understand these symphony and when to clap and when not to, but not because we are not intelligent. I said it will take me. I'm a white paper kind of a guy. I bought my first boat by reading few white papers. So, but you got to connect with us, teach us, and I wanted them to conduct a series of presentations and performance, and to tell us about understanding and appreciating Western and Eastern classical music. And they found it too cumbersome to do that. They would just give the money and go. But that's not the right approach. So I think you have to understand. That's why understanding the cultural background and we don't understand some of these things not because we are not intelligent enough. I'm repeating myself, but just because we have not been exposed to it. So you got to do your job first, and then things will follow.
Any other last thoughts on the arts or giving to the arts? I don't know.
I guess I don't have any additional thoughts on it, but like he's saying, making people aware of it, that's the process. And some people, sooner or later they connect. Obviously, your target audience could be sort of the people who are very well-to-do in order to succeed.
Well, I want to thank our panelists very much for all of your candid thoughts. It was really a wonderful discussion. Thank you.